license and registration.
Sure, here you go. Officer, you're exceeding your authority.
Sir, stay in the car.
You've made a legal mistake. Step back from my vehicle.
Wait, you're a judge?
Now let's talk about this stop.
Blue lights flashed across the empty highway. A patrol unit blocked a silver SUV near the center line. The officer walked toward the driver's window with a harsh tone and a stiff posture. His voice echoed through the dash microphone. He claimed the driver drifted across lanes. The man behind the wheel wore a black suit, white shirt, and a calm stare. He warned the officer to step back. The officer refused. The man stepped out and showed a badge that carried more authority than the uniform in front of him. The judge ordered the officer to stop the traffic stop immediately. Body cams recorded every second. Radio traffic froze. The silence that followed changed more than the roadside scene. The traffic stop started on a quiet highway before dawn. The sky stayed dark. Only streetlights marked the lanes. The officer activated his lights and siren after a short radio call from dispatch. He said a silver SUV swerved between lanes. The recording captured the claim. The camera on his chest recorded the rest. The SUV slowed and pulled onto the shoulder. The officer stepped out with a strict stride. He placed his hand on his holster. His flashlight beam cut through the dark. He approached the driver's window without a greeting. His tone sounded rough. He ordered the driver to keep both hands on the wheel. The driver obeyed. He nodded once and stayed calm. The officer asked for a license. He accused the driver of unsafe movement. The driver asked for the reason for the stop. The officer raised his voice. The driver lifted his wallet and handed over his license. The officer did not read the name. He walked back to his unit and started typing on the mobile terminal. His face looked tense. His breathing sounded heavy on the microphone. The name on the license triggered a match in the system. The driver served as a county judge. His identification confirmed his status. The officer stared at the screen, but he ignored the information. He stepped out and walked back to the SUV. His voice became louder. He ordered the judge to exit the vehicle. The judge remained calm. He asked for the basis of the order. The officer repeated the command. He placed his hand near his weapon. The judge opened the door and stepped out. Traffic remained light. Only the flashing lights illuminated the scene. The officer ordered the judge to walk toward the trunk. The judge complied. He stood near the rear bumper. The officer began a search without consent. The judge turned his head and told him to stop. The officer ignored him and continued. He patted him down and reached into his pockets. The judge stood still. His face looked calm, but his voice carried weight. He instructed the officer to halt the stop. The officer froze. He did not expect that tone. He kept his hand on the judge's jacket for a moment, then stepped back. The judge pulled out a badge from his inside pocket. The badge showed his position and jurisdiction. The officer took a step back with wide eyes. His entire posture changed. He tried to explain his actions. He said the judge swerved. He said the judge refused to answer. The body cam recorded every word. The judge ordered him to stand aside. He walked toward the patrol unit. The officer followed him, unsure of his next move. The judge opened the driver's door of the patrol unit and reached for the radio. He announced his identity to dispatch. He reported an unlawful stop. He stated the officer's badge number. He requested a supervisor on scene. The radio remained silent for a moment. Then dispatch acknowledged the call and sent a patrol sergeant. The officer stood near his vehicle. His hand shook. His breathing sounded louder. He paced back and forth. He knew the body cam captured everything. The search, the tone, the commands. The judge returned to his SUV and retrieved a small notebook. He wrote the time, date, location, and officer's unit number. 5 minutes passed. The sergeant's unit approached with steady speed. His headlights lit the roadside. He parked behind the patrol cruiser. He walked toward the judge and saluted out of respect. The judge returned a short nod. The sergeant reviewed the situation with a neutral voice. He asked for the officer's side of the event. The officer said he saw unsafe movement. He said the judge refused to follow instructions. The judge stood nearby in silence and watched. The sergeant asked for a replay of the body cam recording. The officer pressed a button on his chest to activate playback mode. The recording displayed the stop from start to finish. The sergeant saw the smooth lane changes before the stop. The sergeant saw the calm driver. The sergeant saw the officer search him without consent. The sergeant saw the judge halt the search. When the playback ended, the sergeant closed his eyes for a short moment. He asked the officer if he had any legal grounds for the stop. The officer hesitated. His voice dropped. He tried to defend his decision. He failed to provide evidence. The sergeant directed him to stand near his unit and remain quiet. The judge explained that he expected no special treatment. He wanted lawful conduct. He wanted respect for procedure. He wanted an honest report. The sergeant apologized. The judge accepted the apology but requested that Internal Affairs receive a full copy of the footage and radio logs. The sergeant assured him the department would follow proper procedure. The tension in the air faded. The judge returned to his SUV and prepared to leave. Before he drove off, he looked at the officer. He told him that authority required judgment, not impulse. The officer stayed silent. His face turned pale. The judge entered his vehicle and pulled onto the highway. His taillights glowed as he disappeared over the hill. The sergeant approached the officer. He told him to power down his patrol gear and drive straight to headquarters. His shift ended. The officer nodded without speaking. He sat behind the wheel of his patrol car and pulled away from the scene. The sergeant filed a preliminary report from his vehicle. He wrote a summary of the stop. He attached bodycam timestamps. He submitted the form to supervisors. The station dispatcher received it and forwarded it to Internal Affairs. At the judge's home, the night stood still. He placed his notebook on his desk and reviewed his notes. He printed a copy of his license and placed it with the time and location summary. He prepared a short statement for Internal Affairs. He documented each order given by the officer. He prepared to send it through secure channels in the morning. The next day, the officer walked into headquarters wearing a blank stare. His captain waited in his office. The captain asked him to sit. The officer complied. The captain played the bodycam footage on a laptop. Each second of the stop played in silence. The officer sat stiff in his chair. His face tightened. He saw his own mistakes in full detail. When the recording ended, the captain closed the laptop. He told the officer that he violated multiple procedures. He listed each violation: the unlawful stop, the false accusation, the search without grounds, the aggressive tone. The captain placed a paper on the desk. It ordered the officer to turn in his weapon and duty gear until a formal review. The officer left the office feeling hollow. He walked to his locker. He removed his belt and placed his weapon on a tray. He turned in his keys and radio. He signed a temporary reassignment form. He left the building with slow steps. Internal Affairs requested access to radio traffic, mobile terminal logs, and footage. They prepared an interview. The officer sat in a small room with an investigator. The investigator asked for details of the stop. The officer repeated his claim of unsafe movement. The investigator paused the footage and pointed at the road markings. The SUV stayed centered in the lane. No sudden drift. No risk. The officer admitted error. He lowered his head. He said stress controlled his judgment. The investigator marked notes on a form. The interview ended. The officer left the room. The judge provided his statement by secure email. He attached the note he wrote on the roadside. He requested no special action. He requested accuracy and respect for the law. Internal Affairs thanked him. They assured him the review would stay objective. The sergeant received a message from command staff. He met with them in a private office. He explained the event from start to finish. His words matched the footage. His report matched the dispatch logs. The staff thanked him for a professional response. The officer spent the next week assigned to administrative tasks. He sat at a desk far from patrol units. He filled out forms for licensing and equipment checks. He said little. Co-workers kept a distance. No one mocked him. No one comforted him. They stayed neutral. At the end of the week, the captain summoned him again. The officer stood outside the door for a moment before stepping inside. The captain offered him a chance to speak. The officer apologized. He spoke with low volume. He said he failed to control his tone. He said he violated trust. The captain listened. The review board scheduled a hearing. The officer arrived in a suit rather than a uniform. The board consisted of senior officers, a legal advisor, and a recording clerk. They examined the footage. They examined the officer's report. They examined the judge's statement. The room remained quiet for most of the session. The board suspended the officer. They reassigned him to desk work and mandatory training. They placed a permanent record of the incident in his file. They warned him that further misconduct would end his career. The officer nodded. He signed the paperwork. The judge received a notice that the review concluded. The message stated that discipline took place. The judge closed the email and moved on with his day. He did not seek public attention. He did not request statements from the department. He felt satisfied that procedure worked. The officer returned to the station the next day. He sat in a quiet corner and sorted reports. His badge still hung on his chest, but his patrol duties ended for now. He worked in silence. He understood that every stop carried weight. He understood that authority had limits. He understood that the camera watched and recorded without mercy. The patrol sergeant visited the station early the next morning. He reviewed the full case file again. He checked the timestamps. He checked the dispatch notes. Nothing about the stop made sense to him. He wanted the department to learn from it. He printed training notes for his shift. He planned to address the issue during briefing. The officers entered the briefing room one by one. Some carried coffee. Some rubbed sleep from their eyes. The sergeant stood at the front with a folder in his hands. He waited until the room settled. Then he placed the folder on the desk and spoke. He explained the stop. He described the officer's conduct. He pointed out each violation in direct language. He said the judge stayed calm. He said the officer ignored the law. He told them the judge never raised his voice. He told them the recording left no doubt. No one spoke. The room stayed silent. Several officers lowered their heads. The sergeant wrote 3 statements on the whiteboard. The first stated that authority required discipline. The second said every stop needed a valid reason. The third said consent mattered in all searches. He underlined each statement. He told them to keep those words in their minds. When the briefing ended, officers walked to their patrol cars with quiet steps. Some looked upset. Some looked embarrassed. None of them defended the event. The sergeant watched them leave the lot. He hoped the lesson stuck. Across town, the judge prepared for a regular workday. He sat in his office and reviewed scheduled hearings. He looked calm. The night passed without stress. He planned to handle his docket, sign warrants, and run his courtroom. He had no interest in attention. He wanted routine. A clerk entered his office with a folder. She placed new warrants on his desk. He signed them and placed them on a stack for filing. He spoke politely but stayed focused. The incident from the night remained in the back of his mind. It did not distract him. He respected the process. He trusted it. Later that day, a deputy court administrator walked into the judge's office. She said she received a call from the police department. They informed her that corrective action took place. They sent a written confirmation. The judge accepted the information and returned to work. At the police station, the suspended officer sat alone in a small office. The walls had no decorations. A stack of forms sat on the desk. He filled them out without complaint. Hour after hour, he typed names and dates into a database. He reviewed permit applications. He scanned old files. He had time to think. Time passed slowly. During his lunch break, he sat in the employee kitchen. 2 officers entered. They grabbed food from the fridge. They did not speak to him. They did not stare. They did not joke. Their silence felt heavy. The officer picked up his sandwich and stared at the table. He left early and walked outside to breathe fresh air. He sat on a bench near the rear of the station. A patrol car passed the lot. He watched the lights. He missed patrol work. He missed the road. He missed the sense of purpose. He blamed himself. Later that week, Internal Affairs sent a message to the sergeant. They asked him to attend a meeting. He drove to headquarters and signed in at the front desk. An investigator met him in a conference room. They asked for more detail about the officer's tone and behavior. The sergeant answered each question with clear statements. He did not downplay the event. He did not protect the officer. He stayed objective. When the meeting ended, the investigator thanked him. He left the headquarters and returned to his patrol car. He wrote notes from the meeting and added them to his personal log. The suspended officer met with a department psychologist as part of the review. The psychologist asked him about stress, judgment, and control. The officer admitted that he lost his temper during the stop. He said he misread the driver's tone. He said he wanted to assert authority. The psychologist listened and wrote notes. When the session ended, the officer returned to his desk job. A week later, Internal Affairs finalized their report. The captain called for another staff meeting. Several officers gathered near the front of the room. The captain placed a printed copy on the table. He reviewed the findings. He said the officer acted without grounds. He said the search lacked consent. He said the department would not dismiss the officer, but the record would stay. The judge received a copy of that same notice. He opened it during a break in court. He read it and set it aside. His clerk asked if he needed anything. He shook his head. He continued his docket. He sentenced defendants with clear terms. He signed probation orders. He moved cases along. The officer spent each day completing tasks no one wanted, filing paperwork, sorting evidence room logs, entering license data. He stayed quiet. He left the station at the end of each shift without speaking to anyone. The sergeant checked on him once. He entered the small office and asked how the work went. The officer said nothing. The sergeant told him that accountability had purpose. He told him the path back to patrol required patience. The officer nodded. The sergeant left. Another week passed. The officer completed training modules in the computer room. He took notes. He watched a video about proper conduct during traffic stops. He studied search rules. He studied consent law. He read departmental policies line by line. He learned more in silence than he learned in years on patrol. One afternoon, the captain called him again. The officer walked into the office with slow steps. The captain told him the department approved partial reinstatement. He could return to patrol with restrictions. He would ride with another officer. He would not conduct solo stops. He would complete 8 weeks of supervision. The officer accepted the terms. His first day back on patrol felt tense. He wore the same uniform, but he felt different. His partner for the shift stood beside him at the car. The partner spoke with a calm voice. The officer listened. He checked his gear twice. He checked his radio. He checked his body cam. They rolled out of the lot and drove toward the highway. Traffic stayed light. The officer watched each car with precise attention. He paid attention to speed, signals, and safe movement. He said nothing unless needed. When he spoke, his voice stayed calm. A call came from dispatch. A minor crash near a gas station. The officer and his partner responded. They arrived and found 2 drivers arguing. The officer approached with steady steps. He spoke with respect. He separated the drivers. He asked for details. He wrote accurate notes. The partner watched and said nothing. The officer completed the crash report and gave both drivers instructions. No anger, no raised voice. The body cam recorded a clean scene. Back at the station, the partner told the sergeant that the officer handled the call correctly. The sergeant wrote a short note in the officer's file. Days passed. The officer handled several stops. Each one followed the law step by step. He gave warnings when appropriate. He issued citations only when needed. He kept his body language controlled. He listened before speaking. The judge learned of the officer's reinstatement. A clerk in the court office briefed him. The judge displayed no reaction. He said the process worked. He said the department handled the event. He returned to his docket without diversion. 2 weeks later, the officer and his partner responded to a call about reckless speeding on the interstate. They activated their lights and pulled over a pickup truck. The driver stopped without resistance. The officer approached with caution. He greeted the driver. He requested a license. He ran a quick check. The driver had a clean record but admitted to rushing to work. The officer wrote a warning and explained the reason. The driver thanked him. The officer walked back to the patrol car. The partner nodded once. That small gesture meant progress. During the next shift, the sergeant rode with the officer to observe. They responded to calls and patrolled neighborhoods. The officer stayed controlled. The sergeant asked him to initiate a routine stop on a car with expired tags. The officer complied. He pulled behind the car. He exited with measured steps. He greeted the driver and asked for identification. The driver cooperated without issue. The officer explained the expired tags. He issued a citation. His voice remained level. When he returned to the patrol car, the sergeant offered a short statement. He told him the stop-fit policy. After the shift, the sergeant filed another note. The officer read his own evaluation in the report. The words stated improvement. The words stated control. The words stated growth. The officer did not celebrate. He did not smile. He sat at his desk and organized paperwork from the shift. He knew trust rebuilt slowly. 3 more weeks passed. The officer completed his supervision. The captain held a short meeting. He told the officer he returned to full duty. The partner shook his hand. The sergeant offered a short nod. The officer walked outside and sat behind the wheel of his patrol car. He started the engine. He waited a moment before pulling onto the road. The department moved forward. The judge moved forward. The city moved forward. The officer never forgot the night of the stop. The recording stayed in his mind. The search stayed in his mind. The judge's calm voice stayed in his mind. 2 months passed after the traffic stop that involved the judge. The department settled into routine work again. The case did not appear in public news. The department held no press release. The judge showed no interest in attention. He continued his duties in court without reference to the event. Only the officers, supervisors, and staff members kept it in memory. The suspended officer, now back on full patrol duty, stayed cautious at every shift. His reports showed accurate detail. His stops followed proper sequence. Supervisors reviewed his videos and found no violations. He kept his voice calm and his posture controlled. His fellow officers noticed the difference. One afternoon, a training session took place inside the department auditorium. Patrol officers attended. Command staff attended. The training instructor played selected videos from past stops. Each clip served as a lesson. One clip showed an officer mishandling consent. Another clip showed an officer skipping required steps. Then the instructor played the video from the judge's stop. No one spoke. The room stayed silent. The instructor paused the video at key moments. He pointed to the officer's language. He pointed to the lack of reasonable grounds. He pointed to the judge's identification and clear instructions. The message needed no extra words. The room understood. The officer involved in the stop sat near the back. He listened. He kept his focus on the screen. He did not defend himself. He accepted the lesson. The instructor ended the session with a short statement. He said every badge held responsibility. He said the law applied to everyone. He dismissed the room. Over the next week, community groups met with the police department. They discussed building stronger trust. They asked for updated training. They asked for bodycam reviews. The city council supported these steps. The police chief approved more training hours for patrol officers. He assigned field supervisors to monitor stops with closer attention. The sergeant who wrote the training notes organized a new patrol guide. He created printed cards for each officer. The card listed the steps for lawful stops. It listed required procedures for searches. Each officer placed the card in their patrol car. The judge noticed the improvement during his daily work in court. Defendants spoke about respectful stops. Defense attorneys mentioned clear communication by officers. The judge heard fewer complaints. He signed fewer suppression orders. He noticed reduced tension between officers and the public. Late one evening, the officer who made the mistake returned to the same highway where the incident happened. His shift assignment placed him near that patrol zone. He passed the spot where he pulled over the judge. He remembered the flashing lights. He remembered the moment the badge came out. He remembered the quiet command from the judge. He kept driving. Hours passed with quiet roads. Then dispatch called out a reckless driver near an exit ramp. The officer responded. He located a sedan that swerved across lanes. He activated his lights. The sedan pulled over to the shoulder. The officer approached with caution. He introduced himself. The driver appeared nervous and admitted to distraction. The officer asked for identification. The driver handed it over without resistance. The officer checked the license and vehicle records. Everything came back clear. The officer warned the driver to stay alert. He explained the risk on the highway. The driver thanked him and drove away. The body cam captured a clean stop. The supervisor reviewed it the next morning. He wrote a short remark on the officer's file. The remark stated improvement. The remark stated proper conduct. A few weeks later, the department held a community meeting at a public hall. Residents attended. Officers answered questions. The police chief spoke about transparency. He mentioned training reforms. He talked about accountability. The judge arrived at the meeting without announcement. He sat quietly near the back. He listened to the chief. He listened to officers. He listened to residents. After the meeting ended, he walked toward the chief. They spoke in low voices. No one else listened. The judge thanked him for the changes. The chief nodded and said the department valued the lesson. The judge shook his hand and walked out. Outside the hall, the judge saw patrol cars parked along the curb. One of the cars belonged to the officer who made the mistake. The officer stood nearby and spoke with a resident about traffic laws. His voice remained calm. His posture remained controlled. The judge stopped for a brief moment. Their eyes met. The officer froze. The judge gave a short nod. Then he walked to his car and drove away. The officer stood silent for several seconds. He understood the meaning of that gesture. It meant recognition of change. It meant closure. The department continued its reforms. Supervisors required quarterly video audits. Officers attended updated training. Complaints decreased. Community trust improved. Small changes appeared across each shift. Officers communicated clearer instructions. They responded with respect. They focused on safe outcomes. One night, a new recruit rode with the officer. The recruit asked about steps during stops. The officer explained each rule. He said every stop required lawful grounds. He said consent needed clear language. He said calm voices protected everyone. The recruit listened and took notes. They handled several calls during that shift. Noise complaint, parking violation, minor crash. The officer showed professionalism throughout each call. The recruit observed his tone, posture, and care. After the shift, the recruit filed a training note. The review stated that the officer served as a positive example. At the courthouse, the judge continued his docket without pause. Trials moved forward. Hearings continued. Warrants got reviewed. The judge never discussed the stop in public. He treated the event as part of the legal process. His priority stayed the law. Months turned into a full year. The officer gained trust back from patrol staff. His supervisors gave him new responsibilities. He handled training presentations. He talked about safe stops. He explained consent rules. New recruits listened to him. Field training officers took notes. One day, the police chief invited him into his office. The chief handed him a performance evaluation. The report stated clear improvement. It stated stable behavior. It stated earned trust. The officer signed the report with a steady hand. He thanked the chief and returned to his patrol car. That evening, he drove the same highway again. Cars passed without incident. Streetlights reflected across the pavement. His radio stayed quiet. The officer patrolled with calm focus. At a gas station near the county line, he stopped to refuel. A man stepped out of a nearby SUV. The officer recognized him. It was the judge. The officer stood straight and waited. The judge approached. He did not bring hostility. He did not bring anger. He gave the officer a short greeting. He said the department learned from the event. He said the officer learned from it too. He did not extend any insult. He did not give a lecture. He offered a simple statement before leaving. The officer replied with respect. When the judge drove off, the officer stood beside his patrol car for a moment. The night remained still. The highway sounded quiet. The officer finished fueling the car and returned to patrol. Back at the courthouse, the judge resumed his work with the same calm focus he held before the stop. The event moved from conflict to resolution. The law served its role. The department adjusted its conduct. The judge stayed committed to his duty. The officer completed his shift and returned to the station. He filed his reports and checked his patrol car before going home. He placed his patrol guide card back into the visor. He locked the car and walked across the lot. Nothing about the night turned dramatic. No sudden events. No arguments. No cameras pointed at anyone. The lesson held firm. Procedure mattered. Respect mattered. Law mattered. The officer walked to his personal car with measured steps. He drove home in silence. A year of growth sat behind him. More work waited ahead. He accepted that without complaint. 16 months passed since the traffic stop that sparked change inside the department. The case never reached public drama. The judge did not file charges. The chief did not push for discipline beyond suspension and retraining. Still, the internal effect stayed large. Officers remembered the video. Supervisors remembered the report. The officer at the center of it carried the lesson through every shift. On a warm afternoon, the officer received a call for assistance outside a grocery store on the south end of the city. A minor crash blocked a parking lane. Two drivers argued near a row of cars. Patrol units arrived. The officer handled the call with calm steps. He separated both drivers. He wrote statements. He issued a citation to the driver at fault. His tone stayed even. His body language stayed controlled. A resident nearby recorded the scene. The officer noticed but showed no concern. He followed policy and finished the report. A store employee approached him afterward. She thanked him for handling the dispute without tension. The officer nodded and returned to his unit. His supervisor reviewed the footage later. He logged a short note that praised his composure. During the same month, the department hosted a training seminar with agency leaders from nearby counties. Judges, prosecutors, chiefs, and commanders attended. The focus centered on communication during traffic stops. The chief shared practical steps for smoother contact. He presented short videos that highlighted respectful interaction. One segment showed the officer explaining each step of a stop to a nervous driver. The group approved. When the seminar ended, a visiting prosecutor approached the chief. He asked about the department's reform. The chief explained the training program in quick detail. He stated that officers improved their contact with the public. He pointed to reduced complaints. The prosecutor said the results supported stronger cases in court. The chief thanked him and walked back to his staff. As time moved forward, word spread among residents. People noticed polite stops and clear language. Drivers who made mistakes received explanations. Warnings came with instructions. The department's social media page posted routine reports without controversy. At the courthouse, the judge continued his discipline and routine. His docket moved at steady pace. Public defenders and prosecutors respected his direction. He did not mention the stop during hearings. He did not share private stories. He focused on cases that needed rulings. One morning, a clerk handed him a file that involved a patrol arrest for suspended license. The officer listed proper steps in the report. The arrest video matched policy. The judge checked the officer's name. It belonged to the same officer from the previous event. The judge signed the file and sent it to the next stage in the process. Later that week, the judge received an invitation to attend a legal education panel hosted by the state bar. He accepted. Several speakers talked about modern policing. One speaker discussed bodycam value. Another speaker discussed lawful stops. The judge listened to each presentation. When his turn came, he talked about legal standards. He explained due process. His tone stayed professional. He closed his segment with a statement about equal accountability. When the panel ended, attendees gathered in the hallway for informal discussion. Police chiefs, sheriffs, and prosecutors approached him. They exchanged short greetings. The officer from the incident was not present. He remained on regular patrol during the event. That night, the officer handled a call near a busy intersection where a vehicle spun out during a sharp turn. The driver admitted fault and held no record of impairment. The officer issued a citation and assisted with traffic control until a tow truck arrived. Bodycam footage showed accuracy and stable communication. The supervisor who reviewed it noted continued professionalism. Months kept passing without conflict. The officer earned steady evaluations. Supervisors trusted him with field instruction for new recruits. Each recruit rode with him for a phase of training. They learned procedure from his patrol style. They learned to speak clearly. They learned to follow evidence. The officer never shared the story of the judge. He did not need to. The lesson existed in his work. One evening, the department hosted a public safety event at a high school gym. Officers, firefighters, and paramedics attended. Residents asked about department goals. Children explored patrol cars. The chief introduced his command team. The judge arrived without formal announcement. He stood near a booth where students learned about law careers. Parents recognized him. They thanked him for community service. Across the gym, the officer helped a family install child seats in their vehicle. He demonstrated proper straps and secure placement. When he finished, he closed the door and walked back toward the gym. The judge saw him and stepped forward. Their conversation remained brief. The judge mentioned recent improvements in community relations. The officer nodded. The judge said accountability helped everyone. The officer agreed. They shook hands and stepped apart. No tension followed. The next week, the officer received a letter from command staff. The letter offered him the option to apply for a specialized traffic unit. The position involved advanced crash investigation. It required strong judgment, communication, and report accuracy. He thought carefully before responding. He submitted his application the next day. The department reviewed his file. His record showed early mistakes, then a sustained period of strong performance. His supervisors recommended him. The chief approved the transfer. 2 weeks later, he started the new assignment. He attended advanced classes on collision reconstruction. He learned measurement tools and scene analysis. He studied safety standards in detail. In court, the judge handled a bench trial for a reckless driving case. The officer testified. He presented evidence with clear wording. He answered attorney challenges without hesitation. His testimony remained direct. The judge listened. He ruled based on the facts alone. The conviction resulted from clear evidence and lawful procedure. Defense attorneys left without complaint. After court ended, the officer walked to his patrol car in the parking lot. The judge stepped outside at the same time. They exchanged a short nod before heading their separate ways. Neither needed discussion. Respect replaced the memory of conflict. Over the following months, the officer handled scenes that involved injuries, property damage, and driver mistakes. His reports grew stronger. His bodycam videos stayed consistent. Supervisors praised his accuracy. Prosecutors trusted his evidence. The judge continued his work schedule through court sessions and administrative duties. He signed warrants. He reviewed motions. He heard testimony in criminal and civil cases. His name held weight inside the courthouse and across the county. One afternoon, the city council hosted a recognition ceremony for first responders. Officers and firefighters lined the rows. The chief stepped to the podium and acknowledged staff members for professional conduct. He mentioned officers who demonstrated growth after corrective action. The officer's name appeared in the list. The crowd applauded. He stood, accepted the certificate, and sat down without display. In the back row, the judge watched in silence. When the ceremony ended, the chief spoke with residents. Officers shook hands with city officials. The judge waited until the room thinned. Then he approached the officer. He said the department made progress. He said the officer took the lesson seriously. He did not add praise or criticism. He delivered a straightforward message. The officer thanked him. The judge left the building without more words. When the officer returned to patrol that night, he drove through the same county roads that shaped his early mistake. Rain fell across the windshield. Streetlights reflected off wet pavement. He passed the spot where the original stop took place. No tension followed. No memory of anger remained. Only the reminder that procedure held weight and respect built trust. At the end of his shift, he parked his patrol car, completed his reports, and headed home. His path stayed steady. His work supported safer roads. The judge continued his legal duties. The chief maintained his department. The lesson lived beyond paperwork and video storage. It influenced real conduct every day. Thanks for staying until the end of this case. The story showed how one unlawful stop pushed a department to improve training, communication, and respect for the law. If you want a free guide that explains your rights during traffic stops and how to request body cam footage, the download link will appear in the next video description. A new case drops soon. Stay alert and stay informed.